Roger Stone is here. And Roger has been on my show a couple of times, and it's always a joy to have him on. Roger Stone is a political consultant and advisor for many presidents. Recently was sentenced to 40 months in prison during the Mueller Russia investigation of the Great White Hope, Donald Trump. And as you know, the president commuted his sentences. And I wanted to talk to Roger about that. Roger, welcome to the show. Happy White History Month.
Jesse Lee, great to be back with you.
Thank you, man. Did you know that I started celebrating white history in July? This is our third year of celebrating white history.
I was unaware of that. But, I'm glad to be with you because being anywhere today other than a dank COVID-19 infested prison beats the alternative. Amazingly, contrary to the current policies of the Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of Prisons, contrary to the precedent set in every federal court circuit in the United States, where those who were convicted of nonviolent crimes were moved from incarceration to home confinement, contrary to the conditions in the prison in Georgia they wanted to send me, and contrary to my own age and health, I would have been incarcerated last Tuesday, but for an extraordinarily courageous act of both mercy and humanitarian spirit by President Donald Trump. So I thank God, firstly, because I prayed fervently for justice in this matter.
Yeah.
I thank the president for having the courage to ignore his timid advisors, the same people who give him bad advice on dozens of other topics, for having the courage to literally save my life. You see, they don't want my appeal to ever be heard in court. My appeal will take a year and probably cost me $1 million, but it will expose the epic corruption, not only of my trial, but of the entire Mueller witch hunt, and that they cannot afford. So they were kind of hoping that I would die in prison, and now, thank God, that will not be the case.
Well, congratulations, man. I was praying for you, and I knew this attack upon you was because of your support for the president. I think most people knew that, even if they didn't say it. So congratulations. So explain to me, the president commuted your sentence. Does that mean that you cannot go to jail now?
Well, it means that I will not be sentenced to prison for the offenses for which I'm convicted. However, this allows me to appeal that conviction. Whereas a pardon, if you're pardoned, you are accepting guilt, and there's no ongoing legal action on your part. So the commutation allows me to avoid the danger of imprisonment. In many cases, the court will grant a bond that allows you to remain at liberty while your appeal is pending. But in this case, there was very little chance that the judge would be willing to do that because the need to kill me was too great. And therefore, the only way I could avoid the dangers of incarceration while still continuing to fight to clear my name was a commutation. So I'm perfectly happy with the president's action. I'm grateful for it, as is my family, quite obviously, and I will fight on to clear my name. I will fight on.
That's
because
right.
There was no Russian collusion because I did nothing wrong. But after 2 years of leaks, people believed that I would be charged with treason, with espionage, conspiracy against the United States, all kinds of financial and cyber crimes to assist the Trump campaign, dealing with the Russian state. It was all BS.
Yeah.
And in the end, they pasted together a highly convoluted and fabricated series of charges surrounding my voluntary testimony to the House Intelligence Committee. And Jesse, it's kind of funny that first the prosecutors basically defrauded a bunch of federal judges by claiming that they had evidence of all those serious crimes, 18 of them, no evidence of which was ever found. Then I believe they shared the fruits of their surveillance of my emails and text messages with Adam Schiff. Then Schiff crafted a bunch of gotcha questions, none of which were really material, none of which hid any underlying crime, certainly none of which hid any Russian collusion or WikiLeaks collaboration. And then I obviously tripped over those questions, even though they were innocuous. Then Schiff provided Mueller's dirty cops in a violation of House rules and the law with the classified copy of my testimony. So the whole thing is basically a setup.
Yeah.
And They didn't even open the investigation into me until October of 17, 3 months after they knew there was no Russian collusion.
Amazing.
Proving yet again, this was just a political witch hunt.
Amazing. This woman, Tamika Hart, she was the foreperson for the jury that convicted you. On her social media, it was revealed that she was an anti-Trump, and even posted about your case before they voted to convict you. Can she be punished for that?
Well, she should be. I mean, the point, of course, is that in 2019, she was posting on both Facebook and Twitter, attacking me personally several times. Put the president aside. The judge had already ruled that opposition to the president could not be used to eliminate someone as a juror, which is why I got a jury that was 100% Democrats, 100% Trump haters, not a single military veteran, not a single African-American male, not a single union member, not a single blue-collar worker, not a single person with below a college education, but 3 lawyers. Most jurors had post-college educations. They may have been diverse, but they were not ethnically, but they were not politically diverse in the slightest.
Amazing.
So, but in this case, Tamika Hart, who was the jury forewoman, who outed herself on CNN, that's how we know her name, because she came to the defense of the 4 prosecutors in my case, who try to pass as non-political career line prosecutors, which they are not. They're all highly partisans who worked for either Clinton or Obama. It was revealed, had been posting throughout 2019, attacking me, starting on the day I was arrested. In one occasion, she even posted a link to a story about my case. Yet when we moved post-trial to put aside the verdict and get a new trial, because the U.S. Supreme Court guarantees every defendant a, quote, indifferent and impartial jury, close quote, the judge denied that motion, which shocked every lawyer I know. And therefore, the judge insisted on going ahead. And she actually sentenced me prior to considering my motion to set aside the verdict, which is putting the cart before the horse, to say the least.
That's amazing.
But no, she, as Judge Napolitano has said, Tamika Hart is the one who should be prosecuted. She not only lied on the stand, but I think she lied in the hearing after the trial. She lied during jury selection. I can't speak about her jury questionnaire because it's still sealed, but in the public section of jury selection, she clearly misled the court about her knowledge of me and her knowledge of the case. She ran for Congress as a Democrat in Tennessee. She's an attorney, and she's a protege of Donna Brazil's. How impartial does that sound to you?
I know. It's amazing, man. That is pure evil. I admire you for going through what you've gone through with the government, and yet you're willing to deal with the government. After all you've gone through, you're still willing to stand up for what is right. God bless you for that, man.
Well, you know, I could have taken the easy way out, Jesse Lee. On March 14th, 2019, one of the prosecutors, an assistant U.S. attorney, approached one of my lawyers for a private meeting. They met privately, and they proposed that I, quote unquote, cooperate with the investigation into the president, and that I come clean, they said. It's time for me to confess regarding multiple phone conversations between myself and candidate Trump in 2016. In other words, they wanted me to lie. They wanted me to bear false witness against the president.
Amazing.
Now the media twists that immediately. They're saying Stone bragged about the fact that he had the goods on Trump and he maintained his silence in return for clemency. That's not what I said. I never said that. I never implied that. I never intimated that. What I said was the exact opposite, that I would not lie to bring down the president, because Mueller was getting very close to the publication of his final report, and they had nothing. It was a nothing burger, particularly on the Russia side. So they wanted me to be the ham in their ham sandwich, and I declined. There's no doubt in my mind that if I been willing to lie, they would have used this as an article of impeachment against the president I love so much. So I had no choice. I knew I was looking at serious jail time in a lynching in a DC courtroom, in which the judge essentially disallowed every powerful line of defense, in which the jury was stacked with haters, in which the jury forewoman was corrupt and was working against me. I knew that there was no way to win. My friend Tucker Carlson put it best. He said, Roger Stone's trial was over before it started.
Yeah.
And that is the truth.
Yeah, it is the
In all
truth.
honesty, I now know how African Americans have felt in this country because I just got lynched. I know exactly how it feels to have the whole system rigged against you.
Amazing. You have worked with several President Ronald Reagan, Nixon, Bush, and now the great white hope, Donald Trump. Who has any other president received more hatred as this president have received, to your knowledge?
I've never seen anything quite like this. Look, I think Donald Trump is the hope for all Americans, regardless
Yes.
of color.
Yeah.
Because a rising tide lifts all boats. And I particularly, I've always been a strong opponent of the war on drugs. It was Nixon's biggest single mistake, but as you know, it was turbocharged by Bill Clinton and Joe Biden. Biden is chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, and Clinton as president. They're the guys who come up with the strict mandatory sentences for the first time nonviolent crime of possession of small amounts of drugs.
Yeah.
This has disproportionately hurt black people and poor people more than anyone else. Literally, we've incarcerated millions of people who are not violent criminals, destroying families, destroying lives. And Donald Trump is the only president who has addressed this in his Second Chance Act. That way, people who are trapped in the bowels of our penal system for these ridiculously long sentences, who are not violent criminals, who need rehabilitation, not incarceration, get a second chance at life. I think this is among the president's greatest accomplishments. I want him to talk about it more. We had record levels of African American and Hispanic and Asian and women employment in this country before were forced to destroy our own economy to protect the public health. But my question's an obvious one. The economy's a wreck today. Who better to revive the economy? A man who's already proven that he knows exactly how to do it. He just did it.
Yeah.
Or a man whose prescription is poison. Higher taxes, more regulation, big international trade deals that suck the jobs out of America.
Yeah.
The choice is clear to me, absolutely clear to me.
Same here, man. That's amazing. You're absolutely right. A friend of mine knew I would be talking to you today. He wanted me to ask you, who was more corrupt, Nixon or Clinton?
Oh, it's not even close. I mean, Nixon would be spinning in his grave. Let's look at the comparison between Watergate and Obamagate, if we may. There was never any evidence whatsoever that Nixon knew about or approved the Watergate break-in in advance. Indeed, when you're leading in the polls in 49 states and you're headed for a landslide, what would be the purpose? Nixon also was savvy enough, having been on the ticket 6 times, to realize that there was nothing of value inside the Democratic National Committee to know. The action is always at the presidential candidate's headquarters. So they were never able to prove that Nixon himself would approve this lame brain plan. Where in the case of Obamagate, Barack Obama and Joe Biden used the full legal authority of the United States government and the incredible surveillance capability of our intelligence agencies to spy on the Republican candidate for president, to defraud the FISA courts. They used fabricated information that they knew came from Russian intelligence to justify an illegal coup to take down the president. And then they did it again with Ukraine, which is just as fraudulent. So that's an abuse of power. In Watergate, private citizens who were deranged, frankly, broke into the Watergate. We now know in retrospect that at least 4 of them were still on the payroll of the CIA and had probably already set up the burglars to be arrested. So in terms of corruption, we're not even close. The other difference, of course, Jesse Lee, is that no matter what you think of him, let's take a look at Nixon's accomplishments. First of all, he ended the war in Vietnam. He desegregated the public schools. When he became president, almost 80% of the public schools were still segregated. They became desegregated not under LBJ, not under JFK, but under Richard Nixon, without any bloodshed. He gave us affirmative action, which I am one of the few conservatives who still supports strongly, because it does redress past injustices. He ended the military draft. He reached a strategic arms limitation agreement with the Soviets. He opened the door to China, but he'd be spinning in his grave if he saw how that has been abused.
Yeah.
Future presidents handed the Chinese all of these advantages, particularly the Bushes and the Clintons. He launched the war on cancer. He gave us federal revenue sharing. He unilaterally saved the state of Israel from annihilation in the 1973 Yom Kippur War. I can go on, but there's a record of peace and progress there that Bill Clinton cannot match.
Amazing. I wasn't as into politics back then, but I was getting my haircut by an older black man, and I asked him about Nixon. And he's like, Jesse, don't believe anything, all this bad stuff. These people lying on Nixon. Nixon is a great president. And that's what gave me a different perspective of Richard Nixon when the black man saw him that way.
The first significant piece of civil rights legislation passed in 1958, but all the Southern Democrats, of course, were opposed to it, including Lyndon Johnson. Who is it who goes around and rounds up enough Republicans to pass the bill but Vice President Richard Nixon, for which he gets a warm letter from Dr. King, who recognized that Nixon had a near-perfect civil rights record, and that it was Southern Democrats, including the very wily Lyndon Johnson, who sought to, the entire Southern bloc, which provided nothing other than what they called massive resistance to integration and to civil rights progress. So that is absolutely right. Most people don't recognize that even in the race against John F. Kennedy, who had wisely embraced Dr. King and his wife after King's arrest, where Nixon, being a lawyer, did not want to intervene in the case, a strategic mistake, Nixon still got a third of the votes of African Americans, which is an amazing statistic most people do not know.
Amazing. Did you know the head of Ronald Reagan's foundation, the CEO of the Washington Post, a guy by the name of Joseph Ryan? And he is now asking Trump campaign to stop using Reagan's image. Are you aware of that?
I read about that. That makes no sense to me whatsoever. First of all, I don't know that an American president, a public figure like that, is not like a movie star. It's not like using Elvis's image or Gary Cooper's image or Marilyn Monroe's image to make money. Ronald Reagan is very much in the public domain. I would like to say he was the greatest president in my lifetime, but that's very tough because I was born under Eisenhower, who was much greater than people think. Very understated, but we had unprecedented peace and prosperity under Ike, under Nixon, whose accomplishments I just outlined, under Reagan, who brought us respect around the world, rebuilt our economy, rebuilt our military strength, and now under Donald Trump. So it's very hard for me to say who is the greatest president of my lifetime. Trump is certainly in the running there.
He's amazing.
And he's not finished yet.
Yeah.
That makes no sense to me because Trump is very much in the mold of Reagan, like Reagan, who I worked for through 3 elections, 76, 80, and 84. Trump is a big picture man, just like Reagan. He understands the broad principles of low taxes, less regulation, military strength as a deterrent, and so on. But he's not a detail guy. He leaves the details to the people below him.
Yeah.
He has that same charisma. They're both tall, broad-shouldered, charismatic figures who are inspiring, which in the television age, which we're still in, is vitally important. So in many ways, I think Reagan and Trump are alike, and I don't think it is an unfair to use Reagan's imagery in the re-election campaign of a Republican president. I would also suggest to you, and this is almost bizarre, that when I was arrested, and I'm sure you saw it on CNN.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that, yeah.
Heavily armed FBI agents stormed my home at 6 a.m. The Nixon Foundation, which is staffed by people who never knew Richard Nixon, put out a statement that said Stone and Nixon were never close, which caused me to release 100 letters, 100 photographs, and many passages from books by others like Monica Crowley and Pat Buchanan and others. I never said that I was close to Nixon in his presidential days. I was 19 years old when I joined the Nixon campaign staff. My relation with him really began in his post-presidential years when he lived in New York and later in New Jersey, where I did quite a bit of work for him, vetting invitations and delivering messages and collecting political intelligence from Republican leaders. He had a voracious appetite for political gossip and political information. He was a political man.
Yeah.
But to try to say that we didn't know each other is just contradicted by the public record. I'm not sure the point of that, but it's the same kind of thing we're talking about here. I loved Reagan. I love Nixon, and God knows I love Donald Trump.
And so do I. Joseph Bryan seemed to be a never Trumper. That's the impression I get from this statement. I don't think he's for Trump.
Well, there's a very small group in the party that it takes that position. But I must tell you, having looked at a lot of polling data over the years, I remember when Reagan's approval rating among Republican voters was, in the high 80s, and we thought that was amazing, just amazing. I've seen Trump's approval rating among Republicans in the low 90s, 91, 92. In 40 years of working in politics, I've never seen anything like that. The president's right when he says the party is more united than ever before at the grassroots level. Now, there are a handful of establishment Republicans who might as well be Democrats, the rhinos, as we call them.
Yeah.
The neocons, the Bush Republicans. It's interesting to me because I was a staff assistant to Senator Bob Dole, who I think is one of the greatest Americans who ever lived. A patriot, a man who never got his due, really got the presidential nomination at a time that his time had passed, still ran a valiant campaign, carried more states and got more votes than George H.W. Bush got as an incumbent in 1996. Most folks don't know this. But in the last election, Bob Dole, 92 years old, is being wheeled around Kansas and Missouri in a wheelchair, making speeches for Donald Trump. And the Bushes are up in Kennebunkport. They all endorsed Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
So who are the heroes? Who are the patriots? Bob Dole is a very great man. And even with his declining years, came to the aid of the Republican ticket.
Amazing.
That is a mark of courage.
That is. Roger, give me the image of what the morning that the agents raided your home. Were you in bed? What crossed your mind? What happened when they came into your place? Went into your place?
Well, unfortunately, the folks at CNN are kind of clumsy, so I had a pretty good idea that they were coming.
Oh, okay.
A reporter for CNN called me late on Thursday, the 24th, and asked for my address because she said she wanted to mail me something. That made me very suspicious. But then when I went online, I understood it because you could get my address, but there were two addresses because I had moved not that long before the time that the FBI raided my home. So I said to my wife, they're coming tomorrow morning to arrest me. And she said, you've been saying that for a year. And I said, well, it's because they've been leaking that for a year. But tomorrow morning, I think they are really coming, which is odd because normally you would simply contact my attorney and I would turn myself in, as they did with Michael Avenatti,
right.
As they did with Jeffrey Epstein. But no, I got up at 5 a.m. I took a shower. I put on my Roger Stone Did Nothing Wrong t-shirt, which you can buy at fightback.store, by the way. The Smithsonian is going to be fighting for him soon, so you better get yours now. And
I love it.
I waited in an upstairs bathroom window where you could see the entire front yard. 14 minutes before the FBI showed up, a truck showed up and set up the CNN camera. So that is the shortest journalistic stakeout in history. Amazing. Clearly, they had advance notice. I'll tell you why I know it for certain in a minute. But shortly thereafter, 17 armored vehicles showed up. I could hear a helicopter overhead. I didn't know it until later, but there were two amphibious units pulled up to the dock behind my house because I lived on a canal. The 29 agents were completely outfitted in SWAT gear. They had on night goggles. They were carrying long rifles, assault weapons, I believe. And they pounded on the door. They brought a big battering ram up to the door as if they were going to have to break it in, which was ridiculous. They pounded on the door. I opened the door and I was looking down the barrel with two rifles.
Wow.
And they said, are you Roger Stone? I said, yes. They said, please step outside and put your hands behind your back. We have a warrant for your arrest and we have a warrant to search these premises. I said, sure. I'd like to know the charges against me. I'd like to speak to my lawyer. And they said, well, we'll get to that. Then they said, who else is in the house? I said, my wife. They said, where is she? I said, in the upstairs bedroom. I didn't think to mention, but I should have, that my wife is hearing impaired. She's virtually deaf without hearing aids. She's at about 20% with her hearing aids. And she had slept through this entire commotion. She didn't hear any of it. And then it dawned on me that if they burst into the room and they shouted an order at her, she wouldn't understand it or know what was going on.
Right.
And I was really worried for a second that they'd shoot her by mistake. Fortunately, they woke her up, but she didn't know if it was a home invasion. She had no idea what was going on. They marched me in handcuffs out in the middle of the street, my bare feet, wearing my T-shirt and cut off workout shorts. They marched my wife out in the middle of the street in her nightgown and her bare feet to humiliate her for the CNN cameras. The whole thing was over the top. It was Gestapo style. It's interesting that some of the agents, most of the agents were Miami-based, but the team leaders were working for Robert Mueller. And every once in a while, one of the Miami-based agents would look at me and roll their eyes, or look at me and wink. They knew they were being used, and they didn't like it. This was all political theater. I mean, I was charged with the first time nonviolent crime, a white-collar process crime. I had no previous criminal record. The idea that they had to arrest me this way because I was a flight risk, well, they know I didn't have a valid passport. They knew I didn't own a gun, although I support the Second Amendment. My face is very recognizable, thanks to CNN. And 3 hours later, when I was arraigned, they didn't ask for a cash bond for my release, proving that they never believed that I was a flight risk. And to this day, we still don't know who approved this raid. We don't know how far up the line did this go? Did the head of the FBI approve this? Did the Attorney General of the United States approve this? Did Rod Rosenstein? Who approved this? The FBI director, Mr. Wray, refuses to turn over any records to Judicial Watch, which has now sued for them, emails between CNN and the FBI. We still don't know who wasted the taxpayers' money, but we do know what it cost, Jesse. $1.1 million for the raid on my home.
That's amazing.
Because the government was shut down at this time, so every one of those agents was on time and a half, plus the helicopter, plus the vehicles. It was quite a show, I must say.
That's amazing that a man like you would have to go through something like that in your own country, especially after spending so many years standing up for the country, fighting for the country, that they would put you through something like that. How's your wife doing now that she's gone through all of this? How's she doing?
Well, I mean, my wife is Cuban-American, and she's very, very tough. Her family was displaced from Cuba by the communist regime of Fidel Castro, so she understands what oppression looks like. She has stood by me through this whole thing. When I told her that I was going to plead not guilty, she said, honey, I read that 99% of those people who go to trial and fight are found guilty. And I said, well, I'm just not going to plead to something I didn't do. And I'm certainly not going to lie about the president. So we have no choice but to fight. And they destroyed us financially. I mean, understand, I lost my home. I lost my car. I lost my savings. I lost most of my insurance. I lost my ability to make a living because the judge put a gag on me. Now, this is kind of amazing. Michael Cohen is convicted of various financial crimes. At the very time that I am trying to get exempted from prison and put into home confinement because of coronavirus, he's released from prison, but he breaks the conditions of his probation, which I was under probation. I very strictly followed the rules. He gets caught out at some fancy restaurant, but rather than throw him back in prison, the courts ruled that he can remain at liberty because this is an attempt to bridge his First Amendment free speech rights because of his plans to publish a book.
Amazing.
Well, I wish that judge would talk to the judge in my case, because I was banned from speaking on any topic whatsoever on social media, and very limited in what I could discuss in public, which really cost me the ability to sustain a living and support my family. And that gag order was actually kept in place even after I was convicted, was only lifted at the time that the judge rendered a decision not to vacate the verdict in my trial based on egregious juror misconduct. So it's becoming clearer and clearer, Jesse Lee, that we have a two-tier justice system. The same week that I was convicted was the week that the prosecutor in my case announced publicly that Andrew McCabe would not be prosecuted.
That's amazing. Was that judge Amy Berman Jackson? Is that the judge you're talking about?
That was the judge in my case, yes.
Why don't the president get rid of all of Obama's appointees left over? Because they're like, they hate him. They're never going to do what's right. Why can't he arrest these people, get rid of them? That's what the public want to know.
Well, I mean, first of all, you can't just remove or arrest a federal judge, but there is a process for impeachment of federal judges. It's in the Constitution.
Yeah.
It's happened in the past. It could happen in the future. But the real question is why at the department level, particularly in the Department of Justice, we have, in essence, by appointing an attorney general, we have left the dirty diapers on the baby and changed the pins.
Yeah.
Below the cabinet office in all of these departments, you have Obama holdovers. You have a legion of Trump haters. I mean, the prosecutor, the number 2 prosecutor in my case, Aaron Zelinsky, went over to the Mueller investigation from the Clinton State Department, in essence, and then poses as non-political, then goes back to his job as an assistant U.S. attorney in Baltimore, working for the Trump Justice Department. After viciously attacking the president both in my trial and in his phony testimony to the House Judiciary Committee, where he intimates that he had pressure regarding my sentencing, but he can't name who the person is who pressured him because there was none.
Amazing.
I mean, it was an extraordinary performance. It was a great blend of perjury, hearsay, and BS. But why is he still working for the Trump administration? Why has this guy been fired?
Yeah.
He's going to get prosecuted for misconduct at a minimum in the Papadopoulos matter. I think there's also substantial evidence of misconduct in my prosecution. I don't understand why these people go back to a safe haven of the Trump Justice Department. But you're absolutely right. If there was a mistake, it was not doing as every previous president, regardless of party, has done, which is to clean house and appoint your own people.
Yes.
Obama did it. Clinton did it. Reagan did it. Nixon did it. Eisenhower did it. Every president we've ever had did it. It is perfectly legal. What you have here is even worse. There's an effort to get the president to fire the ambassador to Ukraine, and all the mainstream media people say, oh my God, they wanted to fire the ambassador. That's the president's absolute prerogative.
Yeah.
If he has somebody who's an ambassador who's bad-mouthing him on the diplomatic circuit and who is thwarting his policies, he has the absolute right to replace that person. The question is, why weren't they replaced earlier? Who advised the president to keep all these people in place?
Yeah, I was going to ask you, do we know why the president didn't clean house and bring in new people? Do you know why he didn't do that?
I don't know, other than to speculate that Donald Trump is a businessman. And while he turned out to be an extraordinarily effective campaigner, he did not come into the presidency like, say, Lyndon Johnson or Richard Nixon, who had been vice president and senator and before that congressman. And therefore, he didn't have the intimate knowledge of the workings of the government. He didn't understand the extent of his power. He didn't understand the traditions. He never claimed to be a politician. That's why we elected him.
Yeah.
We elected him because he isn't a politician.
Yeah.
We elected him because he's authentic. He's genuine. He's not a phony. But I'm not sure anybody ever advised him how this has worked traditionally in the past.
Amazing.
Also, the president, this is not unreasonable. He expected the country to do what it has always done, which is to, even on the part of us who didn't agree, to grudgingly unite behind the winner. I was not happy with the election of Barack Obama, but I wasn't calling for his ouster. I thought the Republicans were stupid to try to impeach Bill Clinton. I said so at the time. I still believe it. There were crimes for which he should have been impeached, like selling military secrets to the Red Chinese in return for illegal campaign contributions, but not consensual sex in the Oval Office with an intern, which, while it may be distasteful, was not a grounds for impeachment.
Amazing.
Personal conduct. So, but in this case, the president thought the country would unite around him. Obama was nice to his face. At the same time, he was plotting behind his back to remove him. It's not an unreasonable expectation that the Democrats would give you a honeymoon and then try to beat you in the next election. That's the American tradition.
Roddy,
Instead, we now know the impeachment stuff was launched the minute he was elected.
amazing. Roddy, we ran out of time, but I have two quick questions. Number one, we got to give the president, the great white hope, 4 more years. Once we give him 4 more years, it will happen. Will he put Hillary in jail? Will he lock her up?
Well, I certainly think she should be prosecuted for crimes far more serious for the stuff they prosecuted me for.
Yeah.
But that takes an attorney general with courage. Perhaps instead of Bill Barr, the president should have appointed former Congressman Bob Barr. Perhaps that would have been a better choice.
Amazing. And the second question, I grew up in Alabama, as you know, on a plantation under the Jim Crow laws. And when I was growing up, the word Negro was a common used word for black people. It wasn't a negative. I don't know if it's true or not, but I read that you call a guy by the name of Morris Kelly a Negro. Is that true? And if so, why would you?
That is not true, and I will produce forensic evidence shortly to demonstrate that this tape, which was recorded on a Thursday but released on a Saturday, was basically pasted together, and that inference I can prove scientifically is not me. This is a hit job.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody who knows that I've opposed the war on drugs for 30 years because it's racist, that I support affirmative action, that I worked with Jack Kemp for the establishment of Dr. King's birthday as a holiday, that I opposed stop and frisk in New York City, for which I took a lot of crap from conservatives. My civil rights record, I think, is pretty darn good. I still support affirmative action, for example. Very few conservatives agree with me. I'm even open, sit down, Jesse, I'm open to the idea of reparations.
Man, no.
Yeah,
no, Roger. Don't go down that road.
I'm just a bleeding heart liberal. What can I say? The point is, of course, that this is a hit job.
Yeah.
They're angry because they were not able to incarcerate me and I didn't die in a COVID-infested prison. So this is an invented charge. It's just not true. It's not something I would say. I certainly wouldn't say it on the air. So, but my problem here is that I sent the tape out to a number of sound engineers. They all came back and told me the same thing, that this was pasted together and that piece was dropped in. We know this because the background noise is completely different than the whole rest of the show.
Yeah.
I said, great, would you send me a letter saying that? And they said, well, I don't want to get involved. I don't need Black Lives Matter storming my office. And, I'd rather not get involved. So finding a firm with the courage to tell the truth has been a bit of a challenge in these times. But I specifically deny this. Anybody who knows me knows.
Well, even if you had said it, it's not a bad word. That's what's popular. It's just that the so-called civil rights leader changed the word to black and all that, but it's not a bad word. I do want to say
he says it 8 times in his greatest single address at the Washington Memorial.
Yeah.
The United Negro College Fund is still in operation. But when you say those things, people say, you see, he said it. So I'm not even going to offer that as a defense.
That's right. I know Mo Kelly. I've had him on this show before. He's spoken at my conference, one of my conferences at least. I'm surprised that, I'm not surprised he's a liberal, but I would think that he would clear this up. It would be decent enough to clear it up. But liberals are not decent, so who knows?
He's enjoying his 15 minutes, but we'll never hear of him again. So
Tell the folks how we can help you, Roger.
Well, I still have to finance my appeal. I mean, I'm going to fight to clear my name. You've still got a bunch of leftists trying to reinvent history. Mueller's out the very first day. Stone was in touch with Russian intelligence. No, I wasn't, and you know it. It's nonsense. But fighting this fight and clearing my name is still very important to me, so folks can go to stonedefensefund.com, stonedefensefund.com. My family and I are still struggling. If you want to help us, just keep groceries on the table and gas in the one car we have left, which is 16 years old. You can go to stonefamilyfund.com. Well, any help, any prayers, any help whatsoever is deeply appreciated. 65,000 brave Americans have stepped forward to help me. I would never have been able to survive in this fight without the support and prayers of so many.
Well, I'm going to make sure that I personally help you as well. I know you, man. You deserve it. Help from the American people. You've given a lot to this country, and now you have a time of need. We need to step in and help you, as we need with all men and women who stand up for what is right and attacked by these people. This is amazing. I really have enjoyed talking to you again. I wish you well. I'm glad to see how strong you are in going through all this stuff you're dealing with, and I wish your wife well as well.
Thank you, Jesse Lee. God bless you.
God bless you, man. And let us know whatever we can do to help. Let me know.
Thank you.
All right. Take care now. Amazing. I got to take a break. When I come back, I'm going to take some calls. We have another hour to go. Amazing. And don't forget to like, follow, tweet, subscribe, and share the Jesse Lee Peterson radio show, folks. We really appreciate it. We are at war. It is a spiritual battle for the soul of America. And it's going to take all of us to do it.